What's up, everybody? It is still the 25th of February. We're still here, and we're going to be here for another 5 sessions today after we finish this one. We're talking with the fantastic group of Cristina, Tamika, and Michelle. All things Canvas and Nearpod today. Title of the presentation, Metacognitive Thinking to Promote Students' Engagement with Nearpod. The A-list actress for this show is, of course, Cristina, who is an instructional coach out with Broward County Schools. Just a little bit of background. We're not going to talk about me because no one wants to hear about me. We'll talk a little bit about Tamika and Michelle, but of course, everyone's here to see what it is that Cristina is doing. 12th year with Broward, mathematics instructional coach, master's in educational leadership. She's doing really, really cool stuff. And we just want to highlight her and thank her for the great stuff that she's doing at Broward right now. So thank you, Cristina. Let's turn a little time over to Michelle. Michelle, we want to hear about what is Nearpod and specifically how are Broward County schools using Nearpod today?
Hi, everyone. So Nearpod is a lesson delivery tool for teachers. They can take their own content or find some of our pre-made content with our established public partners and make the learning a little bit more engaging, whether it's virtual or in the classroom. They can embed videos, activities, formative assessments, virtual simulations, VR field trips, tons of stuff, and the learning stays all in one place. There's no going back and forth in between tabs. So it's super, super simple to use. Meanwhile, the teacher gets all that meaningful data back in her student report so she knows what to do the next day with those kiddos and where they are in their learning.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. Taking it off here, Cristina, I want to hear a little bit about how did the school year start? The past year has been crazy with this pandemic, but how did the school year start? How are things going?
So as you could imagine, it has been no doubt a challenge. We have grown and we've learned a really lot this year. And it honestly, I feel like it's been exciting learning because I can see that moving forward, how EdTech and the EdTech world and educators can bridge a lot of gaps that we have right now. For example, like with students with terminal illnesses that are homebound or with students who are hospital bound. Now that we've learned how to mesh these technologies together. So this isn't just something that we're going to be using during the pandemic. I see this something that we can use for the long haul.
I love it. And Cristina, you are an instructional coach, so you spend your time in a lot of different classrooms. Talk to us about the makeup of what you've been doing this year. Is it mostly face-to-face? Is it hybrid? Has it been virtual? What's that setup been like?
So it actually is more of a blended setting, but we have some classes that are 100% here in person, and we have some classes that are 100% online, but most of our classes are blended. When we started off the year, it was 100% virtual. But as we've transitioned, the biggest challenge, I want to say from the beginning, was that blended side, because when you're 100% virtual, everything's being live streamed in one way. When you're 100% in the classroom, everything's being, presented in one way. It's that blended setting that makes that, a little bit tricky. So that's where we are right now in the blended setting.
Awesome. Talk to me a little bit about challenges, because there's been many over the past year. But what are some of the challenges you've dealt with this first semester of the year, and how'd you overcome them?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I want to rewind a minute and give you a little bit of background, because that might help understand where we went and how we handled our challenge. So at Hollow Park, we are a highly diversified school. We have students of all capacities. We're very culturally, linguistically, cognitively diverse school. So about 4 years ago, we had to revamp our thinking on how to meet the needs of all of our learners. And that was when we had implemented whiteboards, or some people call them response boards. There's a lot of research that we did, and the abundance of research says that whiteboards are a great way to culturally and diversely get students to actively participate in your lessons. So about 4 years ago, our entire school had purchased whiteboards for every student, and we were using whiteboards. So when you say, what's the challenge? Now I'm going to go back to that question. Our challenge was we had gotten comfortable for 3 years and really had gotten to the point where we could understand what every student was thinking and get that interaction, and the students were able to respond to us and answer every question simultaneously. And teachers could instantly see what a misconception was, what a challenge was, and feed it or scaffold for it immediately. And that really helped our data. Well, now when we went to virtual, we had to re-image that. We had to think of that in a new realm. Now, we are very familiar with Nearpod, and we love Nearpod as it is. But Nearpod, in the sense, we were using it like Michelle was saying, with the virtual lessons, and we were using it in a way to be able to do those field trips or have them be able to participate in those activities. But it wasn't something we did every day. This was something that we used occasionally. So when we were hit with this, 100% virtual and now also blended, we had to re-image how we would have the kids interact. And that's where Nearpod was a saving grace for us, because Nearpod has the ability as a whiteboard function. So it actually became our digital whiteboards. So in the classroom, some teachers use whiteboards, some people use their desks, or sheet protectors or whatever. But virtually, how do you see every student's thinking so that you can support that child when they're not in front of you? You can't see them. So that's where Nearpod was the saving grace. So we use Nearpod as pretty much our whiteboard. Sometimes we, like you see in the picture currently, and if we move forward, you'll see some more pictures, but the students have the ability to create those particular mats. I call them work mats, because sometimes a whiteboard could be a plain white whiteboard, but sometimes you want them to have some type of foundation. In ELA, right, in language, you might want them to be able to do a compare and contrast Venn diagram or something like that. You can have that set up ahead of time. And as the students are filling in these answers, I can immediately see any misconceptions, any challenges, maybe even a barrier. Maybe there's a learning gap. I can identify it immediately, and our teachers can identify it immediately, even though they weren't in front of them. And that has totally changed the world for us here. That's kind of like what we have done with Nearpod. It really has helped us with being able to do that formative assessment, grab what the kids don't understand, and feed into it. Because right now we have a lot of learning gaps, as those are part of our challenges, a lot of learning gaps. So being able to identify what learning gaps you have for each child during the learning, that's also what makes it so amazing. It's during the learning support. So as you see in the photos here, we have students who are virtual. They're they're being presented on the board, so the teacher can still see them virtually. However, on the right-hand side, you'll see, you can't really, it's not very clear, but there's a little screen there. That's where the teacher would actually be able to see their Nearpod responses. And every single student at home has their own little virtual whiteboard. However, the students in the classroom, because it's blended, students in the classroom don't necessarily need to be on that laptop doing it that way. Those students can be doing it on the actual whiteboard or their desk or in their sheet protector, whatever it is that the resources that the teacher has at that school. But it's almost like we have re-imaged what it means to use a whiteboard. And now a whiteboard is no longer a actual tangible whiteboard. A whiteboard is literally anything that you can see simultaneously students interacting with that content. And that's where Nearpod has changed it for us. It really has helped us. And sometimes we've had people come and ask us, we're noticing that certain data for your school is like way different than what we're seeing in other schools. And they're asking, like, what are we doing? Like, we're doing some kind of, miracle worker over here, or some, something. But in reality, we're using, research-based practice of using whiteboards and formative assessments during the learning assessments and feeding those with scaffolds. And Nearpod has allowed us to be able to do that in this time. So it's been nice, because at first it was scary, but whatever it takes, that's the mode we were in. Whatever it takes, what do we got to do? And together we collaborated, and we were like, you know what, this will fill that. And Nearpod was our saving grace for that.
That's fantastic. So we're going to be talking later today, Cristina, at 3:00 out there in Florida about where do we go from here. It's been a crazy past year. Hopefully all these vaccines work and everything turns out we can go back to normal life again in the not too distant future. However, how do we use these great innovations that you've come up with Nearpod or with Canvas or with your instructional learning team? How can we take this and move it to the next step even after a pandemic?
So that's what I was referring to earlier when I had mentioned, this isn't just something for a pandemic. This is, we have children who are hospital bound and homebound. And they don't get the pleasure to be able to interact with their peers and get that in-person scaffolding and actually have a classroom type experience. This will allow them to have such a thing. Because even though they are on the computer, they can still be interacting with their peers and receiving immediate feedback. And that's something a lot of times they don't have. Most of the time, these type of children, they're receiving one-on-one instruction. It's just them and a teacher. They rarely get to collaborate with colleagues of their own age or their own, mindset. And this will help alleviate that. It also is going to change, culturally, because, when you think about it, culturally, some children are not as acquainted to discussing things. They're not as eager to raise their hand and speak out, especially when you're talking about virtually. It's scary talking when you don't know who you're talking to or who's watching you, or you might say the wrong thing. So students are a little bit intimidated by that. Well, this alleviates that. This is helping us as educators effectively scaffold in the moment and provide, instruction that is strategic and explicit at the time.
I love it. So we had a comment here. Aaron Lunsford, one of our good friends on the Canvas side. One of our friends on the Canvas side, Aaron Lunsford, is asking some interesting questions. Michelle, I think we ought to put you in contact with Aaron because he needs to see the beauty of what can be done with Nearpod. Can you hear me okay, Cristina?
So sorry. Somehow my tech just switched on me from my earbud to my computer. So could you repeat that? So sorry.
All good. We were talking about Aaron Lunsford. We need to just connect here with Michelle because he needs to understand the beauty of what Nearpod can do. Martina did come out and say here, Cristina, Nearpod's Canvas integration is also a must-have for classrooms. Talk to me about how that integration between Nearpod and Canvas is working for you, and why is that a game changer for what you're doing in education?
So Canvas, because Canvas is compatible with Nearpod and they have that relationship, we are not just implementing this program and this technology with our upper grade students. We're using this even with our primary kids of kindergarten and first grade level, and we're able to do that because it's something that we can embed into Canvas. So a challenge that you have when you have very young learners is making sure that it's very, very user friendly, simple as possible, the least amount of clicks, right? So when you can embed these things right into your main page or into your main lesson, it makes it much easier for the students to join in versus them having to log out of one platform, move into another platform, try to log into that platform, put in a code. That's something that's too challenging for a kindergartner or a first grader. So when you are able to take this and just embed it into Canvas, it changes that whole aspect. It changes everything that, all those barriers, it eliminates them. So that's something that has really helped. And even our teachers, they were very nervous about trying to get their kindergartners who traditionally, we went from face-to-face instruction, and kindergarten don't use a lot of technology in the classroom because they're so young. So going from not using much technology to now all technology, that was scary. So having a platform that allowed them to just quickly, simultaneously click from one thing and then go right into doing that Nearpod, giving the teacher the feedback by, writing inside the, right into the screen. Some of them said that, they were worried about like motor skills. I would feel that this actually helped increase their motor skills also, because they're having to use their hands and their fingers strategically on their, mouse pad to be able to write their numbers and their letters and, trace things. So I would beg to differ that this actually would help them with their motor skills than the contrary.
That's awesome. So Tamika, I'm going over to you because I love putting people on the spot. So Tamika, talk a little bit. Let's just gloat a little, if we can, about what Cristina has been able to accomplish with this integration between Canvas and Nearpod during the pandemic. Anything that you can say about what a leader and helper Cristina has been for other educators out there?
Well, I met Cristina during another webinar series hosted by a Dig Deeper team here at Broward County. And as she went through her presentation, I listened about the things that they were doing over at Hollywood Park Elementary. And I thought that this is something that needs to be shared. This is something that other teachers across our district can learn from and implement in their school, in their classrooms with their students as well. They're doing a phenomenal job. I like the fact that they were able to find a need that their students have, and they immediately realized that, hey, Nearpod is our go-to. Nearpod is going to help us meet this need in our virtual setting. So, and I think that it was great because the students were already used to being able to use these whiteboards, but now they're just doing it in a different format, which is virtually using Nearpod and what Nearpod has to offer. And being that it works seamlessly with Canvas takes it up to a whole nother level. Like she said, even with most teachers, dealing with different platforms, the different programs with our babies in kindergarten and first grade, we don't have to deal with the issues of logging in and putting numbers and things of that nature because of how easy Nearpod works with Canvas.
I love it.
I love what they're doing at Hollywood Park, and I'm glad that she has the opportunity to share what they're doing over there today.
Thanks, Tamika. Michelle, what about you? What is it that you're seeing over in Hollywood Park that's being done here in Broward schools? What could we share about what other educators should be trying that Cristina is showcasing?
Cristina already said so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, she touched on so many points. But I think one of the strengths in Broward and the way they use Nearpod is definitely for personalized learning. Cristina touched on it earlier when she mentioned you're getting all that data back on your students, so you know what to do with it the next day. You know how to support, you know how to scaffold, you know exactly where they are in their learning. And that's so powerful. Old school, like she said, we used to hold up the whiteboards. As a teacher, if I'm standing at the front of the class, am I going to remember what 25 whiteboards had on them and who said what, who had the right answer, who had the wrong answer? Probably not. If I'm being honest, I'm not that good with my memory. But now I have a report. I can go back and look at it at the end of the day or the end of the week. And they are just really good at using that data to drive instruction in the classroom.
I love it. Cristina, as we wrap up here, I want your one big takeaway during the pandemic. If there's one thing you could say about how to use Canvas and Nearpod together to help your students to grow, what would that one thing be? Where should people start?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing that I've learned this year is that whatever it takes, that drive to want to figure it out. That I feel like has been the biggest thing that we've learned this year, that anything is accomplishable. And when at first we went and had all these struggles, the biggest thing was equity, right? Making sure that everything is equitable. I feel like if you come together with your colleagues and you discuss what the barriers are, that together you can find, the solution. And that's kind of what happened this year with us, with Nearpod and with Canvas, is together we said, this is what we do, this is what we know works, this is where our data says it works. We can't just drop it because our platform changed or how we present changed. So it was the collaboration and the will to succeed even faced with the challenge.
I love it. Great comment that just came in from Paula Jasser saying, Canvas Nearpod integration is awesome. We couldn't agree more, Paula. We're big fans of our friends over at Nearpod. Of course, massive fans of what's happening in Broward County Public Schools. Huge shout out to Cristina, to Tamika, and other educators who are really just doing incredible things during a global pandemic. Thanks everybody for joining. We will be back in 40 minutes highlighting another incredible educator and partner over at Broward. Everybody, thank you and have a great day.